over the weekend. Last Saturday, I attended the Palestinian protest, but the Friday before that Saturday, I was at a North Korea, South Korea symposium. Let's take a look at it. We're going to play it right now. This is the symposium. Caleb Maupin is with us. Bring him back in.
Hi.
This is over the weekend. Let's take a watch. Let's take a listen. Hey, I'm here with Caleb Maupin. Maupin, what are you doing here?
Well, we're here at Los Angeles Family Church, and we're going to have an event about peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula and finishing what Donald Trump started, sitting down, the United States and North Korea negotiating and moving toward peace on the Korean Peninsula, bringing those troops home. That's what the event is about.
There are two sides to every story. There are two sides to every story, and we forget that. And often the way we hear things, and especially when we talk about countries like North Korea, we hear a very one-sided version of events, and it doesn't even occur to us that there's another side of the story. But if we look at our own history as a country, at a time when we were divided, we can see that there's two sides to that story.
Okay, Caleb Maupin, we talked to you before you came in. We talked about tonight. It's a message of unity, a message of love, a message of understanding, a message of education, a message to move the needle more towards peace and unity within North and South Korea. How did it go tonight?
I think this was tremendous. We had a group of people, from a leftist background, peace activists. We had church members. We had Japanese Americans, Korean Americans. We had Muslim Americans. We had Latinos. This was such a diverse event, packed. I mean, there was barely any chairs left, right? And we started out with a song of unity. And then I gave my presentation. Pastor Joshua gave his, some good questions and all of that. There's people from all different age groups here, all different generations, all different backgrounds. This was a success, and I hope this leads to, the Peace Cup being a step toward peace on the Korean Peninsula.
So that was the event this weekend. I went to it. It was a small event, but like you said, every single chair was filled, a diverse crowd all over the place, and it was really just about education. I think that, Caleb, this particular group, I want you to explain who they are and why they brought you out there. I think they were smart to do this because you are great on this issue, and a lot of people don't talk about this issue. I think we both are in the camp that we think that Donald Trump's greatest foreign policy achievement was going to North Korea, even though he wasn't able to pull it off, even though he wasn't able to stop the drills from South Korea and them kind of mimicking an invasion. That's what a drill is. People don't realize that drills are you're mimicking an invasion of sorts. You're bringing your troops right up to the border. You're actually playing a game of chicken, and you're causing the other side, in this case North Korea, to say, well, when is it not going to be a drill? So they have to be at arms and whatnot. Why don't you explain the group who brought you out there, what this was about, and how we can have further discussions to further the knowledge and the education of what's really going on in North and South Korea? Because when you're in those rooms and you're seeing people from Korea, and the number one issue for reunification of North and South Korea, right, is bringing families back together. That's the number one issue right there. You get touched in the heart and you go, wow, this is something we have to work on. This is something we have to get out there, the information. Please, Caleb Maupin, thank you for joining the show and fill us in on this whole event and what we need to be educated on when it comes to the reunification of North and South Korea.
Well, it was quite an interesting event for me because, my background, I come out of communism, Marxism, etc. But this was a pretty conservative Christian church that originated in Korea. And they are pretty anti-communist. And throughout the Cold War, they ran a lot of anti-communist activism. But after the Cold War, the founder of their church, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, he was able to forgive Kim Il-sung. And he went to North Korea, and we saw video of that at the event. And he actually forgave Kim Il-sung and became a big financial investor in North Korea. And before he died, he was given one of the highest medals that North Korea has, the Reunification Medal, for his lifetime achievement trying to reunify North and South Korea. So, I have been in touch with this church here in New York City where I live, and I've talked to them and said, look, we have a different belief system, a different background. But, I do believe in God, and I consider myself to be a Christian, and I also support North Korea, and I would like to see North and South Korea reunified. I'd like to finish what Trump started and have peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. And so we've been in touch, and we've been talking, and that all led to last weekend where I ended up on a plane to Los Angeles for that amazing event that you were at, that you witnessed. Lots of different people from CPI, the Center for Political Innovation, my organization, people from the Unification Church, people who are peace activists in Los Angeles, Palestine solidarity activists, people of many different backgrounds were there to hear my presentation, to hear the presentation from Reverend Joshua. It was quite an evening. I began my remarks by talking about how the world is changing. And the fact that I went out there to give that talk, the fact that they invited me out there and flew me out there to give that talk, that shows that the world is changing. And we need to look past all this left and right stuff and realize that some people want peace, some people want war. And the world is changing. And it was really one of the most interesting weekends I've had in quite some time. You know, I got to see how LA Family Church operates. They have a lot of younger people that are out doing outreach and stuff. And I mean, it was quite interesting for me. I attended their church service on Sunday morning, and you know, those folks are very, very committed to peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. And they're also, you know, anti-communism is a big part of their focus. But when I spoke to them, you know, they are also questioning really what does that mean. Obviously, they're opposed to communist atheism, et cetera. But, a lot of them are very much in agreement with the idea of having, you know, healthcare for all and education for all and jobs for all. They didn't seem very free market oriented when I spoke to them. So it was very, very interesting weekend. I'm really glad we could put on that event.
Matt?
Yeah,
you
no,
want to jump in? You want me to keep going? I'll start
but
fire. You know me, I won't shut up, Matt. I'll start asking questions.
I want to throw this in because you're describing an event, and I heard about this 2 pasta to go. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even have heard about this. My question, because you know that's some great on the ground reporting. I'm glad you were there to get the story, pasta. Can I ask you, Caleb, what other media outlets are making this an important story? Are you having these conversations on other outlets? Because I'm not seeing it anywhere. And you're talking about the LA community right here. We're right here, and I didn't even know that this was going on until Pasta shared it. So who else is interested in giving you this platform right now?
Well, it's interesting because the event was part of the lead up to something called the Peace Cup that's happening out in LA on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. The LA Galaxy soccer team is hosting an event called the Peace Cup in coordination with this church. That is like a soccer tournament that happens every year. It's dedicated to world peace. But this year, the focus of the Peace Cup is going to be on peaceful reunification of North and South Korea. And their goal is to actually have next year's Peace Cup 2025, in Pyongyang. They want to have it in North Korea as a way of bringing people to North Korea, of getting North Korea out of the isolation that it's in. And that is a big aspect of what the Peace Cup this year, which is in LA, sponsored by the LA Galaxy soccer team this year, is going to be about. So the event we had was kind of a builder for the Peace Cup in Los Angeles for 2024, which is coming up at the end of the month. So it was quite exciting. And I know, there were people from KPFK radio who attended, and I did my best to promote it. And it was a pretty full event. People that are part of my community, the Center for Political Innovation, we were out there. There were also people from different socialist groups. I know there was a guy there from the Party of Communists USA, the PC USA. There were some people there from different, from the Korean Friendship Association, and from different groups that have ties to North Korea and such. And it was quite an event because, people don't talk about North Korea. The formal Communist Party USA has cut ties to North Korea. Even though, you'd think that if anyone would have ties to them, the official bona fide Communist Party would, but they cut off their relationship in 2004. And so, there aren't many American groups that are supportive of North Korea, that look to North Korea as an example of a socialist society. So that's why this event was particularly important.
The Moonies, right? They've been demonized through our media, through our CIA, through our proxies, right? It's crazy to me the way the Moonies are so, when you see these people, they're like, why are they belittling these people? Why are they calling them radicals? They want peace. They want love. They want unification with their aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, because that's what this is about right now. This line that is splitting up people from North and South Korea, it's not what we're told. It's not that Kim Jong-un is just some evil guy and everybody has to sit in their rooms and nobody has the internet, nobody can have fun, and nobody can do anything, and it's just a place where people starve to death. And if anybody says anything, they'll shoot you down. But the Moonies, right, who want this unification, this reunification, putting families back together, are so demonized. Meanwhile, the Falun Gong, right, is now lifted up, and we know what they're all about. They want to overturn the whole Chinese government. What do you say to the Moonies and what they're doing? Are they also related to Moon Jae-in and some of those old leaders, or they just share the name Moon together?
Well, Moon is a very common surname in South Korea. It's interesting because that group has a very complicated history, and I don't represent them, and I certainly can't speak to that. And I'm not here to say that everything that they did over the years has been right or wrong. I know that they've been through a lot of leaps and evolutions over the years. I know their founder, the Reverend Sun Young Moon, is now deceased. They are led by Hak Jahan Moon, which is his widow. They call her Mother Moon. And that they have changed a lot of things and a lot of the way that they do things. I know that their tradition of like the marriage blessing, they call it, they've changed that. They do that very differently now. And that they do a lot of things differently than they once did. But the thing was, I would have gone if the Presbyterian Church had invited me. I would have gone if a Muslim mosque had invited me. I would have gone if a Jewish synagogue invited me. I want to support peace on the Korean Peninsula, because I think if North and South Korea can come together, the whole world can come together. And I also think the negative of that is true, which is that if a shooting war breaks out on the Korean Peninsula, that would be World War III. That would be an all-out war, because Russia and China are very close to North Korea. The USA has 28,500 troops in South Korea, and if things continue to go as they are currently going on the Korean Peninsula, which is not good, if you've seen the latest news, that would be World War III. I mean, we've already got the confrontation, Russia, Ukraine. We've got the potential of danger on Taiwan, and there were shots fired on the Korean Peninsula just a couple days ago. There was an exchange of fire. Now, it didn't go any further than that, thank goodness. But things haven't been as bad on the Korean Peninsula as they are now in quite some time. The Reunification Monument in North Korea was torn down recently, and things were going so well with Trump. Trump paused those very provocative drills, which I talked about in my presentation, which, people say, well, it's just a drill. How could it be provocative? Well, there's 28,500 American troops in South Korea. And every year they have this drill where they march them all right up to the line, and all the tanks and all the airplanes and all that. And they take them right up to the line. And every year North Korea is wondering, which time is it going to not be a drill? Right? Which time does it turn out this is the real thing and they actually attack and invade us? And so, of course, North Korea considers those drills to be an attack, a threat, a provocation. And so then they shoot off missiles all the time to demonstrate that if you do actually cross the border, we can retaliate. We can flood South Korea with missiles. And I mean, it's just a bad situation all around. North Korea has proliferated nuclear weapons. And I think, China and Russia and really the whole world would like North Korea to give up their nuclear weapons, but they're not going to do that until they feel safe, until they're sure that them giving up their nuclear weapons doesn't result in, a
Gaddafi style, invasion.
Yeah, and they came out after Gaddafi died. They said, look, Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons program. He got invaded and overthrown. Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. He got invaded, overthrown. And then more recently, we have Iran that gave up almost all of their peaceful nuclear energy program. And in exchange for that, the USA murdered Qasem Soleimani. The USA reimposed all kinds of sanctions, ripped up the Iran nuclear deal. So North Korea is looking at the United States right now and saying, okay, countries have made deals with you before and it doesn't work out too well. So why should we do that? Right. And so that's why things are so bad at this moment. And they made so many concessions. They opened the door to Donald Trump and all of that. Donald Trump paused the provocative drills and things were going well. And then all of a sudden, everything has just gone to pieces. One of the craziest things is that, some of the people that helped arrange for Donald Trump to make the deal are in exile, have fled, into Russia. Right. There's a guy named Christopher Ems. And he's, I believe a British citizen, and he was a big supporter of peace between North and South Korea. And he went to North Korea and he gave a PowerPoint about how to use Bitcoin. And so the U.S. government has indicted him. He's on the FBI's most wanted list because he made a PowerPoint about how to use Bitcoin. And I said, well, he taught North Korea how to use Bitcoin, and he's fled to Russia, and he's living in Russia now, as a fugitive, more or less, because he gave a PowerPoint presentation, but really because he helped set up the meeting between Trump and Kim, and that there is just an effort by the Biden administration to roll back everything that Donald Trump did, including the good steps he made toward peace on the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, I think though too as well though, Caleb, you're hiding the fact that North Korea, and you've talked about this at your presentation, right? They were so great, no matter what, they would not bend the knee to the United States foreign policy apparatus. The Workers' Party had survived so long, but they also found a way to work their way around sanctions. So somebody talking about Bitcoin gives them more ammunition to get around sanctions. That even the way they do their shipping, the way they list their boats, the number of their boats, they can get around a lot of what the United States is trying to push back on them. I know Matt's got a couple more questions, but one question really before Matt goes, let me ask you this question. They say the United States foreign policy apparatus, the government always says, and and the way they treated Donald Trump, Obama, I can't believe they sat down with him without having any deals on the table. This is ridiculous. You have to make sure they disarm before you sit down and talk with them. We understand that we hear the foreign policy apparatus of the United States saying you need to disarm, get rid of your nuclear weapons. Is it more about then removing that government? Do you think that the United States, if they were able to get North Korea to disarm, do you think they would try to remove that government the way they always do with other countries in the past, like Libya and whatnot?
Well, they've been trying to remove the North Korean government for the last, 70 years. The USA is still technically at war with North Korea. The USA does not have diplomatic relations with North Korea. The USA recognizes the government in South Korea as being the government of the entire peninsula. There is no North Korean embassy in the United States. There's no North Korean consulate. The only office that North Korea has in the United States is their UN mission. And the guys who work there are monitored by the FBI. They can't travel more than so many, a couple miles away from that UN mission, or else they get arrested. There is no relationship. And right now, the policy of the US government remains that they seek to wipe out North Korea. Now I would hope that there could be an end to the Korean War, that the USA, at the end of the Korean War, the understanding was that in 6 months, there would be a formal treaty that was signed. There was an armistice to end the war, and they never then signed the treaty to end the war. So the Korean War is still technically going on at this point. So the idea that the USA would try to overthrow them, that is stated US policy at this time. That's not, it's not like a paranoia that they have. In the 1990s, the United States caused a food crisis in North Korea. North Korea has, a very efficient agricultural system that they built during the Cold War because they're the mountainous part of the Korean Peninsula. They have all the mountains. They don't have very much arable land. So they worked very, very hard to develop a food system. And UN workers and others were very, very impressed with the food system that they developed, but it needed oil. Those tractors, they needed gasoline. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, the petrodollar reigned supreme. North Korea couldn't get dollars. And so their food system came to a grinding halt. And there was a food crisis in North Korea, and millions of people starved to death. And they call it the arduous march period. And what's amazing is that any other government on the earth would have collapsed under those kinds of circumstances. When you have that much malnutrition, people starving to death. But why didn't the North Korean government collapse? Well, prior to the fall of the Soviet Union, North Korea had very dramatic improvements in living standards. The life expectancy from 1949 to 1986 increased by 30 years. That's pretty massive, right? And the amount of hospitals they built, they wiped out illiteracy, they industrialized, they did a huge amount of dramatic improvements to people's lives during the Cold War period with aid from China and the Soviet Union. And that won the loyalty of much of the population. One thing I talked about in my presentation is that people don't realize that North Korea has a lot of non-Koreans living there. There's a lot of Africans living in North Korea. So much so that when Senegal built a monument to their independence, they actually hired North Korea to build it. It's a beautiful monument to the independence of Senegal that was built by North Korea. Not Gaddafi, Robert Mugabe, the leader of Zimbabwe, for a long time, his personal bodyguards were North Koreans. He hired North Korea to provide his personal bodyguards. And there are a lot of Palestinians who live in North Korea, who have fled and moved to North Korea. There's a lot of Arabs living in North Korea as well. So North Korea has a record of internationalism. They had a very close relationship with the Black Panthers, at one point. Eldridge Cleaver, the Black Panther leader, when he fled the United States, he moved to North Korea. In fact, his daughter was born in North Korea. So they're, the idea that they're just this completely isolated country, that's not the truth. They have deep roots in many different countries. And right now they're very, very close to Russia. And one thing that I spoke about, which I thought would be, and it was of particular interest to my audience, is that there's a wave of conversions to Christianity happening in North Korea right now because of Russia. Because in 2006, the Russian Orthodox Church consecrated the Church of the Life-Giving Trinity, which is this beautiful cathedral in Pyongyang, a Russian Orthodox cathedral. And as Russia and North Korea get closer, thousands of Koreans are converting to being Russian Orthodox Christians. Again, that doesn't match what we think about North Korea, but that is actually the situation. Russia and North Korea are getting closer than ever at this time.
Now, going back to the Trump thing, because I mean, this makes perfect sense that of course they're going to be skeptical of our history with other countries when they give up their nuclear weapons. I'm trying to figure out how close did he actually get, and we know that we know that all the pushback here, we were told the wrong story. This is the theme the whole way. We're told this completely opposite, backwards version of what actually is going on there. And then we're educated by our media. We are, I'll say brainwashed literally by our media that any sort of engagement with North Korea is bad. And that Donald Trump is out of his mind. He doesn't know what he's doing, when clearly he was getting somewhere. What do you think was it that, how was he able to make it as close? And do you think if he got back in, would he make this a priority again? Or is there anybody else that would do a better job? Or does it not even really matter, because the war machine runs everything anyway? And if it's time to take out a leader, we're going to do it regardless of who's the face. What I'm asking is, Caleb, is does it make even any difference what somebody like a Trump is even able to accomplish, even in those little baby steps?
Well, there's a lot I could say there. So let's take this apart, one piece at a time. First thing, what was Donald Trump trying to achieve? Well, if you listen to Jim Rogers, the billionaire investor who is the biggest supporter of Donald Trump going to North Korea, the facts are that North Korea is going to give up their nuclear weapons at some time in the next few years, as soon as they feel safe enough. As soon as they can get a guarantee of protection from Russia and China, they're going to give up their nuclear weapons. And when that happens, the sanctions that have been imposed on North Korea by the United Nations will be lifted. And at that point, it's going to be a bonanza in North Korea, because those mountains in North Korea are full of minerals that used to be worthless, but are very valuable now because of cell phones and computer chips. Most North Koreans can speak more than one language. They already make their own cell phones in North Korea in-house because of the sanctions. They can't import cell phone making technology. They have a huge capacity for manufacturing, and it is going to be a bonanza. And when that happens, I think Donald Trump and Jim Rogers, if you listen to what they were saying when that happens, we would like it to not just be Russian and Chinese companies that get rich. We'd like some American companies to make some of that money. And we know that, that Donald Trump handed Kim Jong-un a flash drive, when they first met. I believe their first meeting was in Vietnam, or maybe it was in Singapore. But when they first met, he gave him a flash drive with proposals for all kinds of American investment that could go into North Korea. And it's basically, why should America not be in on the party? North Korea has a lot of wealth that can be made. Why should the United States not be in on it? So that's what motivated Donald Trump. Now, he was opposed mainly by the intelligence agencies, in particular by John Bolton. John Bolton did not want that meeting to happen, and he went out of his way to sabotage it by saying, oh, well, the Libya situation, that's on the table. Well, we know what happened is Gaddafi and Barack Obama were getting close, and the whole time Obama was slipping American NGOs and activists and such into Libya, and then the Arab Spring happened, and there was a protest movement, and it brought down the Libyan government. So for John Bolton to get on television right before Donald Trump meets with Kim Jong-un and say that, he's trying to sabotage the meeting. That's what was going on there. Now, John Bolton has at this point now turned against Donald Trump, says that, that Donald Trump can't be reelected or else NATO will get disbanded, or et cetera. But another thing that happened, and this is, again, it got no press over here in the United States, in Spain, at the same time that Trump was meeting with Kim Jong-un, as the negotiations were happening, in Spain and North Korea have diplomatic relations, have had relations for a long time. The North Korean embassy in Spain was attacked. It was raided by a group of people with very close ties to the United States. And they went into the embassy and they stole a bunch of laptops and they vandalized things and they trashed the place. And that was very, very clearly a provocation. So while Donald Trump, on the one hand, was trying to negotiate and trying to be part of the process of North Korea denuclearizing, on the other hand, John Bolton and a lot of people in American intelligence were trying to undermine him. So at this point, I think it's very, very clear, though, that Donald Trump considers what he did on the Korean Peninsula to be one of his greatest achievements. You know, Pasta and I, we were at the Libertarian Party convention. We heard Donald Trump brag to the room full of libertarians about what he did on the Korean Peninsula. And also, we've seen that not only, you know, the two high officials that were with Trump and were with Trump and Kim when they met, John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, they are both Donald Trump's enemies now. Right? Mike Pompeo endorsed jailing Donald Trump, and the raid on Mar-a-Lago. John Bolton says that Donald Trump can't be elected under any circumstances or else NATO will be disbanded. So the two people who were with Trump when he did that are now no longer with him. So I think Team Trump has had a big purge, right? And Donald Trump, I think personally, the main reason that Donald Trump went to North Korea is he wants to go down in history. He remembers Richard Nixon, who Donald Trump kind of idealizes. A lot of people in Trump's camp have talked about how Trump idealizes Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon met with Mao and started the process of China and the United States, coming together, right? So Donald Trump wants to go down in history as the guy who made peace with North Korea, and he's still bragging about it. So I think that under a new Trump administration, purged of people that are working against Trump would continue to move ahead on this just because it's a trophy he can put on his shelf. It's something he can be remembered for. And in fact, I remember Kamala Harris attacked Donald Trump for ending those drills. And she said, all he wanted was the photo op. All he wanted was the photo op. Well, good, right? If Donald Trump wants to be remembered for going and making peace with a country that the United States has killed millions of people in and has been at war with for decades, and he wants that photo op, he wants to be remembered that way in history, good. Honestly, it's funny because we think of Donald Trump as a narcissist. And I don't disagree with that, but I think Donald Trump's narcissism actually may be our best hope, because no narcissist wants to go down in history as the guy who started World War III. Narcissists want to be remembered well in history. They're obsessed with their image. And because of that, we saw that when Trump was president. He was obsessed with his image, and he didn't do the things that the deep state wanted him to do that would hurt his image. So, I think Trump's narcissism may be a protection at this point. It may be something we've got going for us, but there you go.
So in the speech by, was it Pastor Patrick? What was his name? Pastor
Reverend Joshua Holmes.
Reverend Joshua. He had a great speech too, by the way. He talked about, where a lot of people learned about North Korea was from Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman going there, that great thing, Kim Jong-un being a basketball player. But he had also talked, when I asked questions at the very end, about when it comes to making this deal, a lot is going to be on the shoulders of the Korean people themselves, North and South Korea, right? I had a hard time with that answer because even though this is the moment right here that made me cry, this, I thought, was one of the most beautiful moments. It happened during Donald Trump's presidency. I don't care. Kim Jong-un was going to step over into South Korea. Moon Jae-in, who was the president at the time, I believe his father had written the first pillars of peace, of reunification of North and South Korea. You correct me if I'm wrong. But we had this moment right here. Kim Jong-un was coming in, and all of a sudden he tells Moon Jae-in, come on in over here. And he's so surprised. Let me grab your hand. I cried when this happened. I thought this was beautiful. I don't care what you thought about Donald Trump. I thought this was special right here because we had killed millions of people in that country. How much do you think is going to be on the shoulders of people of North and South Korea? How much power do they really actually have, Caleb, in making sure this gets done? I mean, at the end of the day, you cannot convince me 20,000 ways till Tuesday that unless the United States makes a move for reunification in North and South Korea, it's going to happen. How much is on the shoulders of the people of North and South Korea, in your opinion?
Well, one thing that I talked about with many of the church people I met with when I was out in LA is that, there are a lot of polls saying that people in South Korea don't want to reunify with the North. But I pointed out those polls, you can't trust them because they have something in South Korea called the National Security Law, which says that if you say anything good about North Korea, you can go to jail. There was a young guy who faced 2 to 3 years in prison just for retweeting, ironically, as a joke, one of Kim Jong-un's tweets. So you cannot say anything good about North and South Korea. So those polls are taken under duress. And the same for the human rights hearings about North Korea that are held in South Korea. You can't have a human rights hearing when you have this law, this national security law that's been condemned by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International as a completely ridiculous law. There is not free speech in South Korea. It is illegal to be a communist in South Korea. It is illegal to be a sympathizer. It is illegal to have copies of Kim Jong-un's writings in South Korea. You just can't do it. So these polls that say, oh, well, the people in South Korea don't want to reunify, you can't trust them. They're not taken in an atmosphere where people are going to be honest about what they really believe. And if you remember the Olympic Games that were held in Seoul, when they had the unified North and South Korea team march out, and there was just a huge explosion of applause from the audience, that showed me that there's quite a bit of sentiment for reunification on the Korean Peninsula. And we may not be seeing it, but, there are, and let's not forget that while, South Korea, the majority of its time since the end of the Second World War has been military dictatorship. It hasn't been an open society with free elections. And that throughout the military dictatorships, there were huge protests and uprisings. There was the Gwonju uprising in the 80s. Throughout the 1990s, there were all kinds of riots against the presence of U.S. troops. And those U.S. military bases in South Korea, they have been exposed by South Korean media as being centers of human trafficking, sexual slavery, which is particularly humiliating to the Korean people because of the history of comfort women and what the Japanese did to the Korean people when they were the colonizers. And that there is sentiment in South Korea in opposition to the presence of U.S. troops and in favor of at least reunification with the North. That you will not see. It will not be represented formally in the political process because of their laws. And I think that's important to point out. But yes, it is ultimately up to them. No one can make the two Koreas come together. It's up to the two Koreas. And right now, North Korea is playing hardball, right? Because they tore down the Reunification Monument. They sent the balloons full of garbage and stuff over the border to make a statement. They said, look, we opened the door and everything was going well, and then you slammed the door in our face, and so now they're playing hardball. And I think anyone who's read Donald Trump's Art of the Deal understands that. They can't just come crawling back to the table right now, right? They have to talk tough right now. But my hope is that with a new administration in the United States and with a situation around the globe in other areas that could de-escalate, if things de-escalate, in Ukraine, that things on the Korean Peninsula could start moving in a good direction once again. That is my hope. And I think that will happen.
Matt?
Yeah, no, this is, thank you so much for enlightening us and our viewers. I'm seeing some great comments in our feeds as far as that having a discussion like this, because we're kept on purpose from this information, and we see this thing all the time. This happens every time we were just talking about this earlier with the Putin thing. It's like we are always painted a picture of the bad guy, the demon from another country. We're the good guys. Everyone else has got these horrible leaders that are just ready to blow up the world, and really we're the ones ready to blow up the world. And I don't know, I think we need more conversations like this to get us to recheck ourselves. I mean, you were talking, Caleb, and I'll throw this one out. I know this is just this might be a little Hollywood thing because we're here in Hollywood. We used to think that our movies and our storytelling here reflected accurate stuff and of what our country and our relationship with the world was. And no, we were wrong. We got that wrong the whole time. It's the exact opposite. I think back to the movie, The Interview, and we were told when that came out that this was that there was this massive campaign that film. I guess it was Seth Rogen and James Franco. I forget. I think it was who directed that. Might have been Apatow. I don't know for sure. But there was this whole push on us by our media that we were that movie was going to start a nuclear war because Kim Jong-un was so furious that he was going to come and he was going to infiltrate Sony. I remember this whole thing. Do you happen to have a better take on that now? Now that I mean. Then my memory of it is that we were playing with, we were waking the giant. We were waking up this monster, and this movie was going to cause the destruction of our planet. What was the part of that we missed at the time?
Well, that's interesting because I remember there was the interview, and then there was Red Dawn, which was a movie from the 80s. They remade it to be about North Korea invading the United States. And then there was Olympus Has Fallen, about North Korea seizing the White House. And there was like a slew of Hollywood movies about evil North Korea attacking the United States, or the interview, which was about, some stupid comedy about Americans going and murdering the leader of North Korea. And I think it was very clear this was some kind of intentional psychological operation. This was intended to threaten North Korea via Hollywood, right? It was to let's push on them. If I remember correctly, it was revealed that originally the movie The Interview was going to be about a fictional country. It was going to be about a fake country, maybe modeled on North Korea, but it wasn't North Korea. But then the Obama administration, the State Department said, well, let's make it about North Korea just to mess with them. A very nasty thing to do. And, and it was, those films were very much a provocation, I think. Now, the other thing is that the allegation that North Korea had hacked into Hollywood studios or something like that, I've heard that a lot of questions have been raised. Look, whenever they come out with anything about a cyber attack or whatever, I just kind of roll my eyes because you just have to take their word for it, right? And if you remember Vault 7 from Edward Snowden, one of the things they revealed is that one of the things that the CIA has is not only the capacity to do a cyber attack, but a cyber attack that leaves the digital fingerprints of another country. That is actually in Vault 7. Wow. So I mean, it'll come on the news. Oh my God, there was just a cyber attack from Russia, just a cyber attack from Iran. And it's like, whatever you say, guys, I'll take your word for it. I mean, I just, that goes in one ear and out the other because it's just like, okay. And
I got to correct you really quickly,
cyber attack people, and we don't ever hear about it. I mean, it's just, I don't buy that.
Caleb,
yeah.
I don't mean to cut you off, but Vault 7 was WikiLeaks. Let's get it right. Snowden. All right. It was WikiLeaks. Right.
Right.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but we do have a guest waiting in the wings. But I do want one last final question before we get you out of here.
Yes.
The pulling of designation of the Azov Battalion as a terrorist group, ignoring the Leahy Act and allowing us to arm them directly, even though they're getting armed because the Azov Battalion, like Don DeBar said, I said the Azov Battalion has been integrated into the Ukrainian military. He goes, no, the Ukrainian military has been integrated into the Azov Battalion, right? Why did they remove this designation? Is this more about what Russia's doing in Cuba with the just, in other words, we're going to throw more pie in your face since you're trying to go into Cuba and build relationships right on our doorstep?
No, I think this is because the Ukrainian war is already lost by Ukraine. And they are just trying to pull out every stop they possibly can to keep this going, to insult Russia, to provoke things to go further. Ukraine has already lost the war. They're dragging every last old man off the street. I mean, it's over. It's over. It's been a blowout, and Ukraine has nothing left. And it's like, how can we offend Russia more, right? The Azov Battalion, because they are Nazis, basically, that is a particularly important issue. And, they're tearing down the World War II memorials, et cetera. So that has symbolic value. What I find to be frustrating about the Azov Battalion is that all these woke people, the left, everyone's a Nazi. You're a Nazi. I'm a Nazi. Nazi here, Nazi there. If you like Trump, you're a Nazi. If you question the trans thing, you're a Nazi. You're a Nazi. Everyone's a Nazi, except for the actual Nazis in Ukraine. For some reason, they just don't notice them. It's weird. MSNBC, I was watching MSNBC the other day, and they're pulling up, 6 degrees of separation, Kevin Bacon style links about Trump being a Nazi. And I'm thinking, there's Nazis in Ukraine, and they just legalized giving them American weapons and funding, but they didn't notice that. So there you go. That's my take.
Let me say this much. According to the State Department, you might be a Nazi, Caleb Maupin, but you're our favorite Nazi. We love you guys. Go check him out. He's got a YouTube. You got a Rumble yet or no?
I'm on Rumble. Yep. Rumble.
He's on
YouTube.
Rumble. He's on RT. I love his work over there. Caleb Maupin, everybody. Matt, you got anything else before we get him on out of here?
No, thank you, Caleb. But I'm going to, in our bizarro world we live in, I'm going to go ahead and say hello to you instead of goodbye, since everything is backwards.
Hello.
Okay. Hello, Caleb.
All right.
We'll see you next time.
Yep.
Caleb Maupin, ladies and gentlemen. We love him.